A Good Sport by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. I was a little lad, and the older boys called to me from the pier. They called to me, "Be a sport, be a sport, leap in and swim." I leaped in and swam, though I had never been taught a stroke. Then I was made a hero, and they all shouted, "Well done, brave boy, you are a sport, a good sport." And I was very glad. But now I wish I had learned to swim the right way, or had never learned at all. Now I regret that day, for it led to my fall. I was a youth, and I heard the older men talking of the road to wealth. They talked of bulls and bears, of buying on margins. And they said, "Be a sport, my boy, plunge in and win or lose it all. It is the only way to fortune." So I plunged in and won, and the older men patted me on the back, and they said, "You are a sport, my boy, a good sport," and I was very glad. But now I wish I had lost all I ventured on that day. Yes, wish I had lost it all, for it was the wrong way, and pushed me to my fall. I was a young man, and the gay world called me to come. Gay women and gay men called to me, crying, "Be a sport, be a good sport. Fill our glasses, and let us fill yours. We are young but once, let us dance and sing, and drive the dull hours of night until they stand at bay against the shining bayonets of day." So I filled my glass and I filled their glasses over and over again, and I sang and danced and drank and drank and danced and sang, and I heard them cry, "He is a sport, a good sport," as they held their glasses out to be filled again, and I was very glad. Oh, the madness of youth and song and dance and wine, of women's eyes and lips when the night dies in the arms of dawn! And now I wish I had not gone that way. Now I wish I had not heard them say, "He is a sport, a good sport," for I am old who should be young. The splendid vigour of my youth I flung under the feet of a mad, unthinking throng. My strength went out with wine and dance and song. Unto the winds of earth I tossed like chaff, with idle jest and laugh, the pride of splendid manhood, all its wealth of unused power and health, its dream of looking into some pure girl's eyes and finding there its earthly paradise, its hope of virile children free from blight, its thoughts of climbing to some noble height of great achievement. All these gifts divine I cast away for song and dance and wine. Oh, I have been a sport, a good sport, but I am very sad. A Son Speaks by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. Mother, sit down, for I have much to say anent this widespread, ever-growing theme of woman and her virtues and her rights. I left you for the large loud world of men when I had lived one little score of years. I judged all women by you, and my heart was filled with high esteem and reverence for your angelic sex, and for the wives, the sisters, daughters, mothers of my friends I held but holy thoughts. To fallen stars, of whom you told me in our last sweet talk, warning me of the dangers in my path, I gave wide pity as you bade me to, saying their sins harked back to my base sex. Now listen, mother mine. 10 years have passed since that clean-minded and pure-bodied youth, thinking to write his name upon the stars, went from your presence. He returns to you, fallen from his altitude of thought, hiding deep scars of sins upon his soul, his fair illusions shattered and destroyed. And would you know the story of his fall? He sat beside a good man's honoured wife, at her own table. She was beautiful as woods in early autumn, full of soft and subtle witcheries of voice and look, his senior both in knowledge and in years. The boyish admiration of his glance was white as April sunlight when it falls upon a blooming tree, until she leaned so close her rounded body sent quick thrills along his nerves. He thought it accident and moved a little. Soon she leaned again, the half-hid beauties of her heaving breast rising and falling under scented lace, the teasing tendrils of her fragrant hair with intermittent touches on his cheek, changed the boy's interest to a man's desire. She saw that first young madness in his eyes, and smiled and fanned the flame. That was his fall. And as some mangled fly may crawl away and leave his wings behind him in the web, so were his wings of faith in womanhood left in the meshes of her sensuous net. The youth, forced into sudden manhood, went seeking the lost ideal of his dreams. He met in churches and in drawing-rooms women who wore the mask of innocence and basked in public favour, yet who seemed to find their pleasure playing with men's hearts as children play with loaded guns. He heard, until the tale fell dull upon his ears, the unsolicited complaints of wives and mothers all unsatisfied with life, while crowned with every blessing earth can give, longing for God knows what to bring content, and openly or with appealing look asking for sympathy. The first blind step that leads from wifely honour down to shame is ofttimes hid with flowers of sympathy. He saw proud women who would flush and pale with sense of outraged modesty if one spoke of the ancient sin before them, bare to all men's sight or flimsily concealed by veils that bid adventurous eyes proceed, charms meant alone for lover and for child. He saw chaste virgins tempt and tantalize, lure and deny, invite and then refuse, and drive men forth half-crazed to wanton's arms. Mother, you taught me there were but two kinds of women in the world, the good and bad. But you have been too sheltered in the safe, old-fashioned sweetness of your quiet life to know how women of these modern days make licence of their new-found liberty. Why, I have been more tempted and more shocked by belles and beauties in the social whirl, by trusted wives and mothers in their homes, than by the women of the underworld who sell their favours. Do you think me mad? No, mother, I am sane, but very sad. I miss my boyhood's faith in woman's worth, torn from my heart by good folks of the earth. The Younger Born by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. The modern English-speaking young girl is the astonishment of the world and the despair of the older generation. Nothing like her has ever been seen or heard before. Alike in drawing-rooms and the amusement places of the people, she defies conventions in dress, speech, and conduct. She is bold, yet not immoral. She is immodest, yet she is chaste. She has no ideals, yet she is kind and generous. She is an anomaly and a paradox. We are the little daughters of Time and the world his wife. We are not like the children born in their younger life. We are married with our mother's follies and torn with our father's strife. We are the little daughters of the modern world and Time her spouse. She has brought many children to our father's house before we came, when both our parents were content with simple pleasures and with quiet homely ways. Modest and mild were the fair daughters born to them in those fair days, modest and mild. But Father Time grew restless and longed for a swifter pace, and our mother pushed out beside him at the cost of her tender grace, and life was no more living but just a headlong race. And we are wild, yea, wild are we, the younger born of the world, into life's vortex hurled. With the milk of our mother's breast we drank her own unrest, and we learned our speech from Time, who scoffs at things sublime. Time and the world have hurried so, they could not help their younger born to grow. We only follow, follow where they go. They left their high ideals behind them as they ran. There was but one goal, pleasure, for woman or for man, and they robbed the nights of slumber to lengthen the day's brief span. We are the demi-virgins of the modern day. All evil on the earth is known to us in thought, but yet we do it not. We bare our beauteous bodies to the gaze of men, we lure them, tempt them, lead them on, and then lightly we turn away. By strong compelling passion we are never stirred. To us it is a word much used when tragic tales are told. We are the younger born, yet we are very old in understanding, and our knowledge makes us bold. Boldly we look at life, loving its stress and strife, and hating all conventions that may mean restraint, yet shunning sin's black taint. We know wine's taste, and the young maiden bloom and sweetness of our lips is often in eclipse under the brown weed's stain. Yet we are chaste. We have no large capacity for joy or pain, but an insatiable appetite for pleasure. We have no use for leisure, and never learned the meaning of that word repose. Life as it goes must spell excitement for us, be the cost what may. Speeding along the way, we ofttimes pause to do some generous little deed and fill the cup of need. For we are kind at heart, though with less heart than head, unmoral, not immoral, when the worst is said. We are the product of the modern day. We are the little daughters of Time and the world his wife. We are not like the children born in their younger life. We are married with our mother's follies, and torn with our father's strife.
Happiness by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. There are so many little things that make life beautiful. I can recall a day in early youth when I was longing for happiness. Toward the western hills I gazed, watching for its approach. The hills lay between me and the setting sun, and over them led a highway. When some traveller crossed the hill, always a fine grey dust rose cloudless against the sky. The traveller I could not distinguish, but the dust cloud I could see. And the dust cloud seemed formed of hopes and possibilities, each speck an embryo event. At sunset, when the skies were fair, the dust cloud grew radiant, and shone with visions. The happiness for which I waited came not to me adown that western slope, but now I can recall the cloud of golden dust, the sunset, and the highway leading over the hill, the wonderful hope and expectancy of my heart, the visions of youth in my eyes, and I know this was happiness. There are so many little things that make life beautiful. I can recall another day when I rebelled at life's monotony. Everywhere about me was the commonplace, and nothing seemed to happen. Each day was like its yesterday, and tomorrow gave no promise of change. My young heart rose rebellious in my breast, and I ran aimlessly into the sunlight, the glowing sunlight of June. I sent out a dumb cry to fate, demanding larger joys and more delight. I ran blindly into a field of blooming clover. It was breast high and billowed about me like rose-red waves of a fragrant sea. The bees were singing above it, and their little brown bodies were loaded with honeydew extracted from the clover blossoms. The sun reeled in the heavens, dizzy with its own splendour. The day went into night without bringing any new event to change my life. But now I recall the field of blooming clover, and the honey-laden bees, the glorious June sunlight, and the passion of youth in my heart. And I know that was happiness. There are so many little things that make life beautiful. Yesterday, a failure stared me in the face, where I had thought to welcome proud success. There was no radiant cloud of dust against the western sky, and no clover field lying fragrant under mid-June suns. Neither was youth with me any more. But under the vines that clung against my walls, a flock of birds sought shelter just at twilight, and, standing at my casement, I could hear the twitter of their voices and the soft, sweet flutter of their wings. Then over me there fell a sense of peace and calm, and love for all created things, and trust illimitable. And that, I knew, was happiness. There are so many little things to make life beautiful.
What They Saw by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. Sad man, tell me, pray, what did you see today? I saw the unloved and unhappy old, waiting for slow delinquent death to come. Pale little children toiling for the rich in rooms where sunlight is ashamed to go. The awful almshouse where the living dead rot slowly in their hideous open graves. And there were shameful things, soldiers and forts, and industries of death, and devil ships, and loud-winged devil birds, all bent on slaughter and destruction. These and yet more shameful things mine eyes beheld. Old men upon lascivious conquest bent, and young men living with no thought of God, and half-clothed women puffing at a weed, aping the vices of the underworld, engrossed in shallow pleasures and intent on being barren wives. These things I saw. How God must loathe his earth. Glad man, tell me, pray, what did you see today? I saw an aged couple in whose eyes shone that deep light of mingled love and faith, which makes the earth one room of paradise and leaves no sting in death. I saw vast regiments of children pour, rank after rank, out of the schoolroom door by progress mobilized, They seemed to say, "Let ignorance make way, we are the heralds of a better day." I saw the college and the church that stood for all things sane and good. I saw God's helpers in the shop and slum, blazing a path for health and hope to come, and true religion from the grave of creeds, springing to meet man's needs. I saw great science reverently stand and listen for a sound from borderland, no longer arrogant with unbelief, holding itself aloof, but drawing near and searching high and low for that complete and all-convincing proof, which shall permit its voice to comfort grief, saying, "We know." I saw fair women in their radiance rise and trample old traditions in the dust. Looking in their clear eyes, I seemed to hear these words as from the skies: "He who would father our sweet children must be worthy of the trust." Against the rosy dawn I saw unfurled the banner of the race we usher in, the supermen and women of the world, who make no code of sex to cover sin. Before they till the soil of parenthood, they look to it that seed and soil are good. And I saw, too, that old, old sight and best, pure mothers with dear babies at the breast. These things I saw. How God must love his earth.
The Convention by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. From the queen bee mother, the mother beast, and the mother fowl in the fen, a call went up to the human world, to woman, the mother of men. The call said, "Come, for we, the dumb, are given speech for a day, and the things we have thought for 1,000 years we are going at last to say." Much they marvelled, these women of earth, at the strange and curious call, and some of them laughed, and some of them sneered, but they answered it, one and all. For they wanted to hear what never before was heard since the world began, the spoken word of beast and bird, and the message it held for man. A plea for shelter, the woman said, or food in the wintry weathers, or a foolish request that we be dressed without their furs or feathers. We will do what we can for the poor dumb things, but they must be sensible. Then the meeting was called, and a she-bear stood and voiced the thought of the fen. "Now this is the message we give to you," it was thus the she-bear spake, "you creatures of homes and shrines, and we of the wold and brake. We have no churches, we have no schools, and our minds you question and doubt. But we follow the laws, which some great cause, alike for us all, laid out. We eat and we drink to live. We shun the things that poison and kill, and we settle the problems of sex and birth by the law of the female will. For never was one of us known by a male, or made to mother its kind, unless there went from our mind's consent, or from what we call the mind. But you, the highest of all she-things, you gorge yourself at your feasts, and you smoke and drink in a way we think would lower the standard of beasts. For a ring, a roof, and a rag, you are bought by your males, to have and to hold, and you mate and you breed without nature's need, while your hearts and your bodies are cold. All unwanted your offspring come, or you slay them before they are born. And now the wild she-things of the earth have spoken and told their scorn. We have no mind and we have no souls, maybe as you think, and still, never one of us ate or drank the things that poison and kill, and never was one of us known by a male except by our wish and will.
A Bachelor to a Married Flirt by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. All that a man can say of woman's charms mine eyes have spoken and my lips have told to you 1,000 times. Your perfect arms, a replica from that lost mealess mould, the fair firm crescents of your bosom, shone with full intent to make their splendours known. Your eyes that mask with innocence their smile, the artful artlessness of all your ways, your kiss-provoking mouth, its lure, its guile, all these have had my fond and frequent praise. And something more than praise to you I gave, something which made you know me as your slave. Yet slaves at times grow mutinous and rebel. Here in this morning hour from you apart, the mood is on me to be frank and tell the thoughts long hidden deep down in my heart. These thoughts are bitter, thorny plants that grew below the flowers of praise I plucked for you. Those flowery praises led you to suppose you were my benefactor. Well, in truth, when lovely woman on dull man bestows sweet favours of her beauty and her youth, he is her debtor. I am yours, and yet you robbed me while you placed me thus in debt. I owe you for keen moments when you stirred my senses with your beauty, when your eyes, your wanton eyes, belied the prudent word your curled lips uttered. You are worldly wise, and while you like to set men's hearts on flame, you take no risks in that old passion game. The carnal, common self of dual me found pleasure in this danger play of yours. An egotist, man always thinks to be the victor if his patience but endures, and holds in leash the hounds of fierce desire until the silly woman's heart takes fire. But now it is the higher self who speaks, the me of me, the inner man, the real, who ever dreams his dream and ever seeks to bring to earth his beautiful ideal. That lifelong dream with all its promised joy your soft bedevilments have helped destroy. Woman, how can I hope for happy life in days to come at my own nuptial hearth, when you who bear the honoured name of wife so lightly hold the dearest gifts of earth? Descending from your pedestal, alas, you shake the pedestals of all your class. A vain, flirtatious wife is like a thief who breaks into the temple of men's souls, and steals the golden vessels of belief, the swinging censers and the incense bowls. All women seem less loyal and less true, less worthy of men's faith since I met you.
The Superwoman by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. What will the Superwoman be of whom we sing, she who is coming over the dim border of far tomorrow, after earth's disorder is tidied up by time? What will she bring to make life better on tempestuous earth? How will her worth be greater than her forebears? What new power within her being will burst into flower? She will bring beauty, not the transient dower of adolescence which departs with youth, but beauty based on knowledge of the truth, of its eternal message and the source of all its potent force. Her outer being by the inner thought shall into lasting loveliness be wrought. She will bring virtue, but it will not be the pale white blossom of cold chastity which hides a barren heart. She will be human, not saint or angel, but the Superwoman, mother and mate and friend of Superman. She will bring strength to aid the larger plan, wisdom and strength and sweetness all combined, drawn from the cosmic mind, wisdom to act, strength to attain, and sweetness that finds growth in joy or pain. She will bring that large virtue, self-control, and cherish it as her supremest treasure. Not at the call of sense or for man's pleasure will she invite from space an embryo soul to live on earth again in mortal fashion, unless love stirs her with divinest passion. To motherhood she will bring common sense, that most uncommon virtue. She will give love that is more than she-wolf violence, which slaughters others that its own may live. Love that will help each little tendril mind to grow and climb. Love that will know the lordliest use of time in training human egos to be kind. She will be formed to guide, but not to lead. Leaders are ever lonely, and her sphere will be that of the comrade and the mate, loved, loving, and with insight fine and clear, which casts its searchlight on the course of fate, and to the leaders says, proceed or wait. And best of all, she will bring holy faith to penetrate the shadowy world of death, and show the road beyond it, bright and broad, that leads straight up to God.
3 Souls by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. 3 souls there were that reached the heavenly gate, and gained permission of the guard to wait. Barred from the bliss of paradise by sin, they did not ask or hope to enter in. We loved one woman, thus the story ran. We lost her, for she chose another man. So great our love, it brought us to this door. We only ask to see her face once more. Then will we go to realms where we belong, and pay our penalty for doing wrong. And wert thou friends on earth? The guard spake thus. Nay, we were foes, but death made friends of us. The dominating thought within each soul brought us together, comrades, to this goal, to see her face and in its radiance bask, for one great moment. That is all we ask. And, having seen her, we must journey back the path we came, a hard and dangerous track. Wait then, the angel said, beside me here. But do not strive within God's gate to peer, nor converse hold with spirits clothed in light, who pass this way. Thou hast not earned the right. They waited year on year. Then, like a flame, news of the woman's death from earthland came. The eager lovers scanned with hungry eyes each soul that passed the gates of paradise. The well-beloved face in vain they sought, until one day the guardian angel brought a message to them. "She has gone," he said, "down to the lower regions of the dead. Her chosen mate went first. So great her love, she has resigned the joys that wait above, to dwell with him, until perchance some day, absolved from sin, he seeks the better way." Silent the lovers turned. The pitying guard said, "Stay," the while his hand the door unbarred. "There waits for thee no darker grief or woe. Enter the gates, and all God's glories know. But to be ready for so great a bliss, pause for a moment and take heed of this. The dearest treasure by each mortal lost lies yonder, when the threshold has been crossed, and thou shalt find within the sacred place the shining wonder of her worshipped face. All that is past is but a troubled dream. Go forward now and claim the fact supreme. Then, clothed like angels, fitting their estate, 3 souls went singing, singing through God's gate.
Occupation by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. There must in heaven be many industries and occupations, varied, infinite, or heaven could not be heaven. What gracious tasks the mighty Maker of the universe can offer souls that have prepared on earth by holding lovely thoughts and fair desires. Art thou a poet to whom words come not? A dumb composer of unuttered sounds, ignored by fame and to the world unknown? Thine may be, then, the mission to create immortal lyrics and immortal strains, for stars to chant together as they swing about the holy centre where God dwells. Hast thou the artist instinct, with no skill to give it form or colour? Unto thee it may be given to paint upon the skies astounding dawns and sunsets, framed by seas and mountains, or to fashion and adorn new faces for sweet pansies, and new dyes to tint their velvet garments. Oftentimes, methinks, behind a beauteous flower I see, or in the tender glory of a dawn, the presence of some spirit who has gone into the place of mystery, whose call, imperious and compelling, sounds for all, or soon or late. So many have passed on, so many with ambitions, hopes, and aims unrealized, who could not be content as idle angels even in paradise. The unknown Michelangelos, who lived with thoughts on beauty bent while chained to toil that gave them only bread and burial. These must find, waiting in the world of space, the shining timbers of their splendid dreams, ready for shaping temples, shrines, and towers, where radiant hosts may congregate to raise their glad hosannas to the God supreme. And will there not be gardens glorious, and mansions all embosomed among blooms, where heavenly children reach out loving arms to lonely women who have been denied on earth the longed-for boon of motherhood? Surely God has provided work to do for souls like these, and for the weary rest.
The Valley of Fear by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. In the journey of life, as we travel along to the mystical goal that is hidden from sight, you may stumble at times into roadways of wrong, not seeing the signboard that points to the right. Through caverns of sorrow your feet may be led, where the noon of the day will like midnight appear. But no matter whither you wander or tread, keep out of the valley of fear. The roadways of wrong will wind out into light if you sit in the silence and ask for a guide. In the caverns of sorrow your soul gains its sight of beautiful vistas, ascending and wide. In bypaths of worry and trouble and strife, full many a bloom grows bedewed by a tear. But wretched and arid and void of all life is the desolate valley of fear. The valley of fear is a maddening maze of paths that wind on without exit or end. From nowhere to nowhere lead all of its ways, and shadows with shadows in more shadows blend. Each guide-post is lettered, "This way to despair," And the river of death in the darkness flows near. But there is a beautiful roadway of prayer This side of the valley of fear. This beautiful roadway is narrow and steep, And it runs up the side of the mountain of faith. You may not perceive it at first if you weep, But it rises high over the river of death. Though the roadway is narrow and dark at the base, It widens, ascending, and ever grows clear, Till it shines at the top with the light of God's face, Far, far from the valley of fear. When close to that valley your footsteps shall fare, Turn, turn to the roadway of prayer, The beautiful roadway of prayer. War Mothers by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. There is something in the sound of drum and fife That stirs all the savage instincts into life. In the old times of peace we went our ways Through proper days of little joys and tasks, Lonely at times when from the steeple sounded wedding chimes, Telling to all the world some maid was wife, But taking patiently our part in life As it was portioned us by Church and State, Believing it our fate. Our thoughts all chaste held yet a secret wish to love and mate Ere youth and virtue should go quite to waste. But men we criticised for lack of strength And kept them at arm's length. Then the war came, the world was all aflame, The men we had thought dull and void of power Were heroes in an hour. He who had seemed a slave to petty greed Showed masterful in that great time of need. He who had plotted for his neighbour's pelf Now for his fellows offers up himself. And we were only women, forced by war To sacrifice the things worth living for. Something within us broke, something within us woke, The wild cave woman spoke. When we heard the sound of drumming as our soldiers went to camp, Heard them tramp, 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 As we watched to see them coming, and they looked at us and smiled, Yes, looked back at us and smiled, As they filed along by hillock and by hollow, Then our hearts were so beguiled That for many and many a day We dreamed we heard them say, "Oh, follow, follow, follow." And the distant rolling drum called us, "Come, come, come," till our virtue seemed a thing to give away. War had swept 10,000 years away from earth. We were primal once again. There were males, not modern men. We were females meant to bring their sons to birth. And we could not wait for any formal rite. We could hear them calling to us, "Come tonight." For tomorrow at the dawn we move on. And the drum bellowed, "Come, come, come." And the fife whistled, "Life, life, life." So they moved on, and fought, and bled, and died. Honoured and mourned, they are the nation's pride. We fought our battles too, but with the tide Of our red blood we gave the world new lives. Because we were not wives we are dishonoured. Is it noble, then, to break God's laws only by killing men to save one's country from destruction? We took no man's life, but gave our chastity, and sinned the ancient sin to plant young trees and fill felled forests in. O clergy of the land, Bible in hand, all reverently you stand, on holy thoughts intent, while barren wives receive the sacrament. Had you the open visions, you could see phantoms of infants murdered in the womb, who never knew a cradle or a tomb, hovering about these wives accusingly. Bestow the sacrament. Their sins are not well known, ours to the four winds of the earth are blown.
The Revealing Angels by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. Suddenly and without warning they came. The revealing angels came. Suddenly and simultaneously, through city streets, through quiet lanes and country roads they walked. They walked crying, God has sent us to find the vilest sinners of earth. We are to bring them before Him, before the Lord of life. Their voices were like bugles, and then all war, all strife, and all the noises of the world grew still, and no one talked, and no one toiled, but many strove to flee away. Robbers and thieves, and those sunk in drunkenness and crime, men and women of evil repute, and mothers with fatherless children in their arms, all strove to hide. But the revealing angel passed them by, saying, Not you, not you. Another day, when we shall come again unto the haunts of men, then we will call your names. But God has asked us first to bring to Him those guilty of greater shames than lust, or theft, or drunkenness, or vice, yea, greater than murder done in passion, or self-destruction done in dark despair. Now in His holy name we call, come one and all, come forth, reveal your faces. Then through the awful silence of the world, where noise had ceased, they came, the sinful hosts. They came from lowly and from lofty places, some poorly clad, but many clothed like queens. They came from scenes of revel and from toil, from haunts of sin, from palaces, from homes, from boudoirs, and from churches. They came like ghosts, the vast brigades of women who had slain their helpless, unborn children. With them trailed lovers and husbands who had said, Do this, and those who helped for hire. They stood before the angels, before the revealing angels they stood, and they heard the angels say, and all the listening world heard the angels say, These are the vilest sinners of all, for the Lord of life made sex that birth might come, made sex and its keen compelling desire to fashion bodies wherein souls might go from lower planes to higher, until the end is reached, which is beginning. They have stolen the costly pleasures of the senses and refused to pay God's price. They have come together, these men and these women, as male and female they have come together in the great creative act. They have invited souls, and then flung them out into space. They have made a jest of God's design. All other sins look white beside this sinning. All other sins may be condoned, forgiven. All other sinners may be cleansed and shriven. Not these, not these. Pass on and meet God's eyes. The vast brigade moved forward, and behind them walked the angels. Walked the sorrowful, revealing angels.
The Graduates by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. I saw them beautiful in fair array upon commencement day, Lissome and lovely, radiant and sweet as cultured roses, brought to their estate by careful training, finished and complete as teachers calculate. They passed in maiden grace along the aisle, leaving the chaste white sunlight of a smile upon the gazing throng. Musing, I thought upon their place as mothers of the race. Oh, there are many actors who can play greatly great parts, but rare indeed the soul who can be great when cast for some small role. Yet that is what the world most needs. Big hearts that will shine forth and glorify poor parts in this strange drama, life. Do they, who in full dress rehearsal pass today before admiring eyes, hold in their store those fine high principles which keep old earth from being only earth, and make men more than just mere men? How will they prove their worth of years of study? Will they walk abroad, decked with the plumage of dead bards of God, the glorious birds? And shall the lamb unborn be slain on altars of their vanity? To some frail sister who has missed the way will they give Christ's compassion or man's scorn? And will clean manhood, linked with honest love, the victor prove, when riches, gained by greed, dispute the claim? Will they guard well a husband's home and name, or lean down from their altitudes to hear the voice of flattery speak in the ear those lying platitudes which men repeat to listening self-conceit? Musing, I thought upon their place as mothers of the race, as beautiful they passed in maiden grace.
The Silent Tragedy by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. The deepest tragedies of life are not put into books or acted on the stage. Nay, they are lived in silence, by tense hearts in homes, among dull, unperceiving kin, and thoughtless friends, who make a whip of words wherewith to lash these hearts, and call it wit. There is a tragedy lived everywhere in Christian lands, by an increasing horde of women martyrs to our social laws, women whose hearts cry out for motherhood, women whose bosoms ache for little heads, women God meant for mothers, but whose lives have been restrained, restricted, and denied their natural channels, till at last they stand unmated and alone by that sad sea whose slow receding tide returns no more. Men meet great sorrows, but no man can grasp the depth and height of such a grief as this. The call of fatherhood is from man's brain. Man cannot know the answer to that call save as a woman tells him. But to her the call of motherhood is from the soul, the brain, the body. She is like a plant which buds and blossoms only to bear fruit. Man is the pollen, carried by the wind of accident or impulse or desire, and then his role of fatherhood is played. Her threefold knowledge of maternity, through 3 times 3 great months, is hers alone. Man as an egotist is wounded when he is not father. Woman, when denied the all-embracing role of motherhood, rebels with her whole being. Oftentimes rebellion finds its only utterance in shattered nerves and lack of self-control, which gives the merry world its chance to cry, "Old maids are queer." In far-off Eastern lands they think of God as mother to the race, father and mother of the universe, and mayhap this is why they make their girls wives prematurely, mothers over young, hoping to please their mother God this way. Since everywhere in nature sex is shown for procreative uses, they contend sterility is sinful, save when one chooses a life of saintship here on earth, and so conserves all forces to that end. Here in the West, our God is masculine, and while we say he bade a virgin bring his son to birth, we think of him as one placing false values on forced continence, preparing heavens for those who live that life, and hells for those who stray by thought or act from the unnatural path our laws have made. Mother of Christ, thou being woman, thou knowing all depths within the woman heart, all joy, all pain, O send the world more light. Enlarge our sympathies, and let our minds turn from achievements of material things to contemplation of eternal truths. Space throbs with egos, waiting for rebirth, and mother-hearted women fill the earth. Mother of Christ, show us the way to thin the ranks of childless women without sin.
Father and Son by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. My grande dame, vigorous at 81, delights in talking of her only son, my gallant father, long since dead and gone. Ah, but he was the lad, she says, and sighs, and looks at me askance. How well I read the meaning of that glance. Poor son of such a dad, poor weakling, dull and sad. I could, but would not tell her the bitter truth about my father's youth. She says, "Your father laughed his way through earth, he laughed right in the doctor's face at birth. Such joy of life he had, such founts of mirth. Ah, what a lad was he!" And then she sighs. I feel her silent blame, because I brought her nothing but his name. Because she does not see her worshipped son in me. I could, but would not, speak in my defence, anent the difference. She says, "He won all prizes in his time, he overworked and died before his prime. At high ambition's door I lay the crime. Ah, what a lad he was!" Well, let her rest in that deceiving thought. Of what avail to say his death was brought by broken sexual laws, the ancient sinful cause? I could, but would not, tell the good old dame the story of his shame. I could say I am crippled, weak and pale, because my father was an unleashed male. Because he ran so fast I halt and fail. Ah, yes, he was the lad. Because he drained each cup of sense delight, I must go thirsting, thirsting, day and night. Because he was joy mad, I must be always sad. Because he learned no law of self-control, I am a blighted soul. Of what avail to speak and spoil her joy? Better to see her disapproving eyes, and silent hear her say, between her sighs, "Ah, but he was the boy." The Traveller by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. Bristling with steeples, high against the hill, like some great thistle in the rosy dawn, it stood, the town of Christian churches stood. The traveller surveyed it with a smile. "Surely," he said, "here is the home of peace. Here neighbour lives with neighbour in accord. God in the heart of all. Else why these spires? Christmas season and every bell ringing." The sudden shriek of whistles changed the sound From mellow music into jarring noise. Then down the street pale hurrying children came And vanished in the yawning factory door. He called to them, "Come back, come unto me." The foreman cursed and caned him from the place. Christmas season and every bell ringing. Forth from two churches came two men and met, Disputing loudly over boundary lines, Hate in their eyes and murder in their hearts. A haughty woman drew her skirts aside Because her fallen sister passed that way. The traveller rebuked them all. Amazed, they asked in indignation, "Who are you, daring to interfere in private lives?" The traveller replied, "My name is Christ." Christmas season and every bell ringing.